last evening. Global markets, and first up, let's talk about the US markets. And if I have one word to sum up the action we saw yesterday, it is mayhem, because blood was shed on Wall Street yesterday. Deep shades of red coming across across my screen. You have stock futures that rose last evening after a sharp tech-driven sell-off dragged the Nasdaq Composite and the S&P 500 to their worst session since 2022. Now, let me take you through what these intraday moves look like. And Dow was lower by 1.25%. 500-point cut coming in on that index. What's worse, S&P 500 lower by 2.3% or 128-point cut coming over there. And if you think this is where the sorrow ends, you're absolutely wrong, because you have Nasdaq that has fallen the most by more than 3.6% lower yesterday. A 655-point cut coming in on the Nasdaq in one intraday session alone. Lots of lots of negativity seen on Wall Street yesterday. Wednesday's trading session saw intense declines for both S&P 500 as well as Nasdaq. This was driven by disappointing quarterly reports from Alphabet as well as Tesla. This led other heavyweight tech stocks and artificial intelligence darlings like nvidia and Microsoft to fall in sympathy as well. Both the broad market index and the tech-heavy benchmark posted their worst session since 2022, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average shed roughly 500 points to end the day. Now, investors have been viewing the recent declines as a sign of an overdue correction in an overbought market, which is now seeing a rotation away from mega-cap tech stocks into the small-cap stocks and more cyclical areas of the market. Remember, last week, the entire week, we have been highlighting the moves on Russell 2000, which is America's small-cap index, because that was seeing some exuberance while all three of your benchmarks were lagging in trade. Now, on the earnings front, and after hours trading, Ford Motors shares tumbled about 11% after the company's second quarter earnings came in much lower than what the analysts had expected. We'll tell you more about this later in the show as well. Chipotle, meanwhile, added roughly 4% after topping earnings and revenue expectations. IBM and ServiceNow also rose after beating expectations. We'll talk about IBM's results in more detail a little later as well. Now, although some major tech names missed expectations this week, an overall positive earnings season so far is propping up investor enthusiasm. More than 25% of the companies in the S&P 500 have reported their second quarter earnings, according to FactSec data. Now, in terms of what other data we can hope to see, Thursday will see an additional slew of financial results from American Airlines. You have Northrop, Grumman, Honeywell, as well as Hasbro, among several other companies that will be coming out with their quarter two numbers. On the data front, you have jobless claims and preliminary second quarter GDP data, very important metrics. Both of them will also be released before the market opened today, US time. But while that was the US, let's shift focus and look at Europe. And well, in tandem with the US markets is what Europe has performed, because DAX is lower by 1%, FTSE lower 0.2%, and the overall stock 600 also pressured 0.6% lower. But while that was on the equity front, Shreyansi, also tell us what crude and gold were up to.
Well, absolutely, and it's very difficult to look away from that bloodbath that we saw on our screens, right? And mayhem just about sums it up, Snehi, for Wall Street. But then let's also take a look at US crude oil futures. And they rebounded yesterday, breaking a 3-day losing streak as stockpiles fell. Gasoline demand as well rose, and wildfires in Canada also are raising the risk of supply disruptions at this point. Now, when you take a look at US crude stockpiles, they fell by 3.7 million barrels, and when you take a look at gasoline inventories, you're looking at declines of about 5.6 million barrels for the week ending July 19th there as well. And this is, of course, according to the EIA data coming in. Now, gasoline supply to the market, a proxy for demand, increased by 673,000 barrels per day. So that is the kind of picture that we've seen for crude stockpiles as well as gasoline demand. Let's also take a look at the price boost that we saw then. When you take a look at WTI September, the most active contract, you're looking at levels around $77 per barrel. So an uptick of 63 cents or 0.8% coming in there. When you look at it on a year-to-date basis, though, you're looking at gains of about 8.3% there as well. Let's also take a look at Brent then, because you do have Brent that is pinned at those $81 per barrel levels. Uptick of about 70 cents or 0.9% coming in for that one as well. And year to date, that contract is also ahead 6%. Meanwhile, wildfires continue to rage in Alberta, though oil production in Canada remains solid. The worst of the wildfire season still lies ahead and could pose a risk to supplies. So that definitely is something that the market is looking at, and that's also something that Goldman Sachs highlighted in a note on Tuesday as well. US crude oil fell nearly 2% on Tuesday, mind you, the third consecutive day of losses coming in for that benchmark, and amid renewed hopes that Gaza ceasefire negotiations could de-escalate Middle East tensions, and as gasoline demand in the US has largely disappointed so far this summer season. So that is something that we saw coming in on Tuesday rather, and then we also covered the move on Wednesday as well. But let's also take a look at gold prices then. Gold prices rose on Wednesday as the dollar slipped, with investors' focus also shifting to US economic data due this week, fresh signals on the timing of the central bank's interest rate cuts as well. So when you're looking at the price movements coming in for gold, you do have spot gold that was up about 0.7%, around those $2,400 per ounce levels. Now, in terms of other asset classes, you also have Bitcoin that led the crypto market lower. On Tuesday, the first trading day of Ether ETFs also, and the price of Bitcoin was last lower by 3%, and that's the kind of move that we've seen this week for Bitcoin coming in. Important day that we had for Bitcoin there, so important to mark that as well. But then that's the roundup coming in terms of oil, gold, as well as crypto, Snehi.
Absolutely, but you know what? Before we
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.